Belinda the Beetle. Chapter 5. Belinda is awkward. Snoop lay in the bushes. He wiped his face with a handkerchief. He was hot, hungry and thirsty, and he had all sorts of sore places where Belinda bumped and grazed and pinched him. Voices came to him from the party on the beach. "Come on, let's have dinner, I'm famished." He heard the exciting crackle of paper as sandwiches were unwrapped and his mouth watered. He heard the lovely cool gargle of drinks being poured out of the bottles. "I could do with some of that," he moaned. "Just like Brown to leave me here starving," he grumbled. "I bet he's having a slap-up dinner himself. It'd serve him right if I did snitch the car and the jewels. Better not, I suppose. I'll give him another half hour." The fact was that Snoop was afraid of Brown. The time passed slowly, and Snoop, tired of doing nothing, wriggled closer, but a high treble voice brought him up short. "Well, anyway," said the voice, "if I was to go to the bushes and look in them, I'd better find something important. I'd show it to Daddy, and Daddy would show it to the police, and they'd find who it was with it." "What pests kids are," complained Snoop, and crawled quickly away. He began to feel that he'd spent most of his life popping in and out of bushes. All kids should rest after dinner. Their parents should insist on it. That's the trouble with these modern parents. They're too easygoing. The voices died away to a murmur. After a little while, he raised his head and peered out. False alarm, he thought. Parson and his wife are quiet now. What about those kids? Running down to the sea? Good. If Brown comes soon, the coast will be clear. I'll give him 10 minutes. And he settled himself down as comfortably as he could. "Confound it," he said. "What's biting me?" He got up and turned to look where he had been sitting. Jiminy Christmas, it's crawling with ants. They were scurrying in hundreds up his leg and into his trousers. He took his trousers off and flapped them furiously to dislodge the ants. "That settles it," he growled. "If Brown thinks I'm going to stay here to be eaten alive, he's got another thing coming. I'm going to take the car." Belinda was dozing. "Thank goodness Mr. X will frighten Snoop away," she thought. "He is a horrid man. But I taught him a lesson, I did. I taught him 2 lessons. First time I pinched his head in my bonnet," she chuckled. "And this time I pinched his fingers in my door. All the same," she went on comfortably, "I'm glad Mr. Exel took my key. I feel safer now." Belinda was mistaken. Snoop crawled towards her. He still had ants in his pants, and they were still biting him. He was so cross that he didn't care tuppence about Brown. Bending double, he sprinted the last few yards between the bushes and Belinda and scrambled in. His fingers hurt where Belinda had pinched them, but he could still use his other hand. He took a hairpin from his pocket. He always carried hairpins. He found them quite useful. He bent it and poked it into the keyhole of Belinda's switch. Oh, protested Belinda. "Go away, you horrid Snoop." But no one heard. And at last, Snoop found the right shape for his hairpin and turned the switch. "I'll have to push her, I suppose," he said to himself. "The engine would make too much noise." So getting out, he went to Belinda's front and started to push her backwards up the track. Poor Belinda tried to call out, but she was switched off and couldn't make much noise. "I'll be awkward," she said to herself. "Perhaps if I'm awkward enough, Snoop will get cross and make a noise, and Mr. Exel will come." The track was steep, and Snoop couldn't push and steer properly at the same time. Belinda wobbled her steering wheel and went from side to side. Every few minutes, Snoop had to stop, pull her straight, and start pushing again. After about the 6th time, he stopped to rest and lit a cigarette. "Confound it," he muttered. "Are we never going to reach the road?" "Not if I can help it," chortled Belinda. She slipped her handbrake and started rolling down the hill with Snoop in pursuit. "Ha ha!" she laughed. But the track was rough, and she hadn't got very far before a stone caught one of her wheels and stopped her. Snoop pounced on her triumphantly. "Drat you!" he exploded. "Anyone would think you were alive." After that he was careful, and chopped her wheels whenever he stopped to rest. "Bother that stone," grumbled Belinda. "If it hadn't stopped me, I could have run right down the hill to Mr. Exel and woken him up." Then she had an idea. "If stones can stop me going down," she thought, "stones can stop me going up. Here are some. Ah!" And she settled down comfortably, with her front and back wheels wedged between two big ones. Snoop pushed and pulled frantically, but she wouldn't move. "Hooray!" she chortled. "That's wazzled you, Mr. Snoop." But Snoop wasn't beaten yet. He heard a shout from the beach. He had to get away, and didn't care now how much noise he made. Scrambling into Belinda, he started her engine, and eased her over the stones. Belinda shuddered. "Help!" she tooted. Snoop jumped. He hadn't meant to blow the horn. "Help! Help! Help!" wailed Belinda. "Oh, my poor wheels and springs!" she groaned. For Snoop was racing her over the last 50 metres of bumpy track which led to the road. "Mr. Exel! Mr. Exel! Help! Help!" wailed Belinda. "Oh, it's too late," she sobbed. She heard her family shouting behind, but Snoop had turned left and was driving her at top speed along the coast road. Oh dear! Will Mr. Exel ever be able to find me?" she wondered. "I must do something to help him. What can I do?" "I know," she said after a moment, and waited for her chance. They came to a village. The road was narrow here between the houses, and there was a sharp bend. A farm cart drawn by a horse was plodding through the narrow gap. Snoop tried to pull out and pass, but cars were coming in the other direction, and he had to draw back. "Confound that cart," he said angrily, and he tooted Belinda's horn to make it get out of the way. "Toot!" shouted Belinda. This was her chance, and she made the most of it. They passed the cart, but Belinda wouldn't stop tooting, and they flew through the village with her horn blaring. People came out of their houses, children ran after her, the horse and the farm cart took fright and bolted into the field. The policeman at the crossroads shouted, but Snoop was past caring what he said. At last they were clear of the houses. Snoop stopped with Belinda's horn still sounding fiercely. He got out and cut a wire. There was silence. Snoop mopped his face. "Why do these things happen to me?" he groaned. "It isn't fair." Belinda chuckled and thought about the next thing she could do. They started again. Snoop wanted to throw the vicar off the scent, so he swung a right at the crossroads. "This will diddle them," he chuckled. "They'll never believe I turned back towards Earlsbridge." He drove Belinda hard to make up for lost time. Belinda didn't like this. Presently, she hissed, and began to sway from side to side. Then bump, bump, bump. Snoop got out. "Well, for evermore, it's a puncture now." Several people came by. They gave him advice. Snoop thought he would be better off without it, and told them so. At last he finished changing the wheel, and started again. The road was getting lonely, and the wind blew cold across the moors. There was not a house in sight. Just a place, thought Belinda, and she began to cough. Then she went on as if nothing had happened. Coughed again, picked up, coughed again, and stopped. Well, of all the... fumed Snoop. He was so angry that he got out and kicked Belinda. He forgot he was wearing thin shoes. He didn't hurt Belinda a bit, but he hurt his own toes dreadfully. He hopped about, holding his foot and saying things about Belinda, but Belinda only laughed. Snoop tried to undo Belinda's petrol pipe and blow down it, but the spanner kept slipping and he burnt his fingers on the hot engine. You wait till Mr. Exel comes, chuckled Belinda. At last Snoop gave up and began to look for the jewels. He was in such a hurry that he pulled everything out and flung them on the side of the road, but he found exactly nothing. He took out his big knife to rip up the cushions, but he saw a big Bentley coming. That's Brown, he said, and pocketing the knife, he dived into the bushes.